Back in the late 1720s, a man by the name of Benjamin Franklin sat down and he put together a plan that he called a bold and arduous project of arriving at moral perfection. As part of his project, he listed 13 virtues that he wanted to develop. His plan was to spend 1 week on each virtue so that he could master it and then move on to the next one, and he would be able to do this 4 times in a year, cycling through those 13 virtues. Today, developing virtues, or even hearing the word virtue, is not something that's as common, especially in the world of entrepreneurship and knowledge work. The focus instead is on hacks, methodologies, systems, frameworks, tricks, software tools. And there's nothing wrong with these things, but they should sit on top of a foundational layer of character and virtue and commitment. Because hacks are fickle and virtue is foundational, right? So if you're lazy, you're a chronic procrastinator, and you consistently seek the path of least resistance, the easy path, when you know internally that you should be seeking the difficult path, a hack will not help you. Sure, it might give you a quick motivational boost. You might discover a new tactic for scheduling work blocks in your calendar, or a new morning routine that seems to energize you. But inevitably, you end up back where you were, in a state of dissatisfaction, knowing that you are capable of more, but not making the necessary commitment to fundamentally change yourself and your character. And so you fall back to who you are, your character, your work ethic, your virtue. When you commit yourself to developing virtues and developing your character, you will find that it is the opposite of fickle. It's robust, it's anti-fragile, it's foundational. You strip yourself of the anti-virtues, the laziness, the procrastination, the seeking of the easy path, and you replace them with moral virtues. Discipline, diligence, duty, doing what you know you should do. It's also worth noting that hacks only work in specific contexts. Virtues are transferable. So people can employ productivity hacks in their work life, but in other domains they suffer because those same hacks just don't work. That's why you'll come across people who are super productive at work because they've optimized their schedule, they use timers, they've created a focus-friendly environment. But when it comes to fitness, health, their home, their family, other areas of their life, they are a mess. They're only disciplined in one area, which really means they're not disciplined at all. But virtues are transferable. Those who are consistent and diligent are usually so across multiple areas of life. It doesn't mean they're balanced, it doesn't mean they're perfect, but they have a consistency which comes from that character and virtue. Hacks are also no match for feelings, whereas virtues can override them. Our modern culture has a high view of feelings. You can see it manifest itself in this extreme political correctness, but also in individuals who absolve themselves of responsibility because it's uncomfortable or they don't feel like it. I'm not grandstanding, I've been there. I've wasted months, if not years of my life procrastinating and avoiding responsibility simply because I didn't feel like it. And the issue is I treated those feelings as my compass. But the philosophers of old realized that feelings were unreliable and should be subjugated to virtue. And really, they can only be subjugated to virtue because hacks are no match for them. Knowing how to use the Pomodoro technique will not overcome the negative feelings that force you into these overthinking and procrastination cycles. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that we should just ignore and avoid feeling altogether and just act like robots, though sometimes acting like a robot is actually helpful. I'm simply saying that we should recognize that feelings are unreliable. Surprise, surprise. Just because I don't feel like working doesn't mean I should go play video games. If I embody the virtue of discipline, I do the work anyway. And likely my feelings will change as a result as I start doing the work and building that momentum, which is a nice bonus. The other point I want to make is that virtue is worth developing regardless of the material outcomes, or say the financial outcomes or business outcomes or personal development outcomes. It's a goal in and of itself. And Epictetus says, moral progress results in freedom from inner turmoil. So virtue isn't a means to an end, but developing it is extremely likely to lead to better material outcomes, because when you lack virtue and you embody these anti-virtues like laziness or carelessness or frivolity, I think that's how you say it, frivolity, dishonesty, impulsivity, there's a low-level anxiety and stress that pervades your life. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. It's like you can never truly relax. You can never truly be satisfied because you know something's broken and you're not doing anything about it, and you know you're not acting in accordance with your ideal self, who you really want to be. And that causes this sort of low-level anxiety and restlessness and dissatisfaction. But when you work towards developing virtue, you get better at it. You experience the sense of calm and peace that's hard for me to articulate, but you've likely felt something like it before. You feel mentally and emotionally stronger. You are more willing to do your work and finish your projects. You're less shaken up by bad events and bad news. You stay the path and develop good habits. And it's worth asking yourself this question. Do you want to achieve something, or do you want to be someone? Anyone can achieve fleeting success. It takes some luck, it takes, some hard effort for a brief period of time, but we all know people who have done that and then fail to replicate it, or they become egotistical as a result, and they just aren't fun to be around anymore. Now, I don't know about you, but when people talk about me behind my back, I don't want them to necessarily talk about what I've done or what I've achieved. I want them to talk about who I am. I want to be known as a person who's disciplined, who has integrity, who perseveres, who's patient and consistent. Hacks might help you achieve something. They might help you finish a project, but cultivating virtue builds your character. It builds who you are. So now what I want to do is apply 5 of Franklin's virtues to productivity and work. I'm not going to list all 13. I've picked 5 of the most relevant ones. And as I mentioned at the start of this video, virtues, we just don't talk about them much today. Like, when's the last time you heard someone say to you, I want to develop the virtue of temperance or chastity? And while the world we live in today is very different to the world Franklin lived in, and the way we work has radically changed, human nature has not. So instead of coming up with my own list of virtues for this video, which I did think about doing, I figured it would be better to lean on the shoulders of someone much smarter and much more accomplished than me. So let's take a look at these 5 virtues, applying them in context to our modern age. The first is temperance. Franklin says, when he writes it down, eat not to dullness, drink not to elevation. Now, Franklin selected temperance as a virtue he wanted to develop because, as he writes, it tends to procure that coolness and clearness of head, which is so necessary where constant vigilance was to be kept up and guard maintained against the unremitting attraction of ancient habits and the force of perpetual temptations. There's a lot to unpack there, but if you can control your food intake and you can restrain from drinking too much alcohol, then you're halfway there, right? Many people cannot. They eat to deal with stress, they overeat because food tastes good, and they tell themselves just this once, but it ends up being a thing that happens multiple times per week. When you can control what you eat and what you drink, you build a confidence that flows into other habits like work ethic and good decision making. If you can temper the most primal of urges, like hunger, then you are better set to manage other urges like procrastination. And going off script a bit here, the other reason why I think this is an important virtue is that I would say 50% of the reason why people struggle with work ethic and productivity and procrastination is because their physiology is all messed up. Like, they don't eat well, they don't exercise, they don't sleep well. If you can embody and develop temperance and control what goes into you, then you're just gonna be a better, more effective human being in whatever you're doing, especially work and especially knowledge work, because you cannot separate the physical and mental. The second virtue is silence. Franklin writes, speak not but what may benefit others or yourself. Avoid trifling conversation. It seems like everyone needs an opinion on something nowadays. Everyone needs to have a take, including myself, which is why I'm making this video. Social media draws us into battles that we have no purpose being in. trivial debates that pull our attention away from the work that we should be focusing on. Adopting the virtue of silence means avoiding this, being more deliberate with your speech, listening more. But it also applies to the work that we do. So many people feel the need to talk about their ideas, to broadcast into the world, to say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this, but this doesn't benefit others, and it certainly doesn't benefit you. Instead, adopt the virtue of silence. Work in silence. Let your results speak for themselves. The third virtue is order. Let all your things have their places. Let each part of your business have its time. We could also call this organization, right? Order, organization. And it's more important than ever in our modern age, perhaps even more important than it was back in Franklin's time. There's more to distract us. There's more demands on our time. We're busy, we're largely disorganized, and we're running, or a lot of us at least, are running on this hamster wheel of life. So we need to create order. What does this look like? Well, it looks like performing weekly and monthly reviews and plans to stay on top of what you need to do, find improvements that can be made, and benefit from this regular introspection. It means outsourcing, if you have the means, the tasks that get in the way of you doing your most important work. It means having a routine, a daily routine, a weekly routine, reducing the flexibility that you think leads to freedom, but rather leads to chaos. True freedom is found in the daily schedule, in the daily routine. True freedom is found in that order and organization. The fourth virtue is resolution. Resolve to perform what you ought. Perform without fail what you resolve. The person who's developed the virtue of resolution, the person who has resolve, has rock solid determination to accomplish what they set out to do. Unfortunately, many budding entrepreneurs, creators, and modern knowledge workers I come across lack this resolve. They have ideas, plans, goals, but they just don't follow through on them. Their resolution wasn't there. And I put myself in that camp as well. I've been there so many times. I just haven't had resolve. And the fifth and final virtue I want to include in this video is industry. Franklin writes, lose no time. Be always employed in something useful. Cut off all unnecessary actions. I just love the way this is written. See, volume matters. Even if you're doing knowledge work or creative work, the hours you put in matter. Being industrious, having strong work ethic is the virtue that so many modern knowledge workers and solopreneurs are hesitant to develop, or they kind of underweight it or have a low view of it. They think there's a shortcut. They think there's a way to apply leverage instead of putting in the hard yards, but there's not. Yes, leverage is the thing and you should use it, but you must be working hard. You must be using your time wisely, not letting it go to waste. And the crucial phrase here from Franklin is be always employed in something useful. The way I interpret this is not necessarily as working all the time, but rather being deliberate about how you spend your time. Useful to me is work, exercise, spending time with family or friends, intentionally relaxing when I need it, but not when I don't. Reading, some sort of creative hobby. But then there's the useless, the unnecessary actions. Things like procrastinating when I have work that I need to get done or should be getting done. Intentionally taking longer to do a certain task as a form of procrastination when it could be outsourced or done much faster. The pursuit of perfectionism. The list goes on. There's a ton of useless actions that I and you probably engage in on a daily basis. So now that we've covered the 5 virtues, let's look at the anti-virtues. I don't even know if anti-virtue is a word, but I like it. So the first is laziness. Avoiding responsibility, avoiding our work, constantly seeking the easy path. Laziness pervades all areas of life. And laziness has been a thing throughout history, but I would argue that given our modern comforts, it's actually easier than ever to be lazy, right? We just have certain luxuries and certain things that 200 years ago you didn't have. And so it's easier than ever to fall into this pattern of laziness. You need to guard against it. The second anti-virtue is distraction. As Cal Newport said in Deep Work, and I'm paraphrasing, I can't remember the exact quote, The modern superpower is the ability to focus deeply for extended periods of time. One thing that holds us back from doing that is obviously distraction. Distraction while we're trying to work, our phone, notifications, and distraction from our core goals, like shiny object syndrome and constantly jumping from project to project. So we want to avoid that. The third anti-virtue is frivolity. Frivolity, I'm pretty sure it's frivolity, but I could be saying this wrong. But this is a word that's not often used. And to me, it's like the opposite of, significance or opposite of seriousness. Like it's being too light, not taking anything seriously. You don't need to take everything seriously, but you do need to take some things seriously. The person who doesn't take anything seriously at all is frivolous, right? They don't give anything any weight. And so they don't pursue what's difficult and what's important. They jump from idea to idea. They jump from project to project. They don't really see it as important whether they finish something or not. They never take themselves or their work seriously, and they suffer eventually as a result. The fourth anti-virtue, carelessness. So perfectionism is a form of procrastination, right? I've talked about it before on the channel. It's something we should avoid. And there's something to be said about just shipping your project. Like if you're working on a product or you're working on a book or whatever it may be, like at some point you just have to get it done. You have to put it out into the world even though it isn't perfect. But on the other end of the spectrum, there's just complete carelessness. Not caring about the end result at all, or not caring about it enough. You should still want to do good work. You still need to push through that plateau to create something good, right? Like as I'm filming this, I've tried recording 2 other videos I have scripts for that I'd written a while back, and I spent like an entire hour and I was like, this is not good enough. I don't want to put this out into the world. If I was careless, I would have just chucked them up on YouTube, even though I didn't think they were good. So you need to care in order to do good work. Carelessness ruins your reputation because you put out work that just isn't good. It is hard to find that balance between perfectionism and carelessness. But when you can find it, when you can truly, focus on doing good work, which is hard, but not falling into the trap of this needs to be perfect, which is also a mistake and a form of procrastination, and also without falling into the carelessness trap, like that's where you want to be. It's hard, but that is where you want to be. Number 5 is short-sightedness. Part of being productive and being an elite performer is about making good decisions and judgments. After all, it doesn't matter how hard you work if you work on something that doesn't matter. If you're short-sighted, you don't make good judgment calls. You don't make good decisions. You don't look far enough into the future to see what's likely or unlikely to happen. Quite often, people embody this anti-virtue of short-sightedness because they refuse to acknowledge what's coming or what might be coming, because the future might be uncomfortable and they might need to adapt. And you can see this at the moment with AI, where some people kind of tricking themselves into thinking it's not going to be a big deal and they're not going to get replaced. And unfortunately, a lot of those people are wrong. And what they should be doing is adapting instead of just, ignoring it or being short-sighted or pretending that it's not actually going to happen. Number 6, impulsivity. The more impulsive you are, the more distracted you become and the less depth you acquire in your work. The overly impulsive person is also unreliable because they do not stay the path. They make decisions without any thought. They let their emotions guide them. Not only can other people not trust them, but they can't trust themselves. And the final anti-virtue I wanted to list is arrogance. Arrogance leads to poor work output because you think that you're better than you really are. There's a benefit to humility that forces you to put in the hours to get better. Every time I thought that I was really good at something, I've ended up not doing great work. And conversely, when I've been in that beginner's mindset of, I need to put in the reps, like I need to practice and put in the hours here, that's always resulted in better work because there's a humility that's kind of embedded in the work that I'm doing. I'm paying more attention to it. I'm not taking anything for granted, and I'm just putting more effort into it. It always results in a better outcome. And if you're in business, anything actually, and you're arrogant, it is a recipe for getting lapped. I've seen so many people get too confident, too arrogant, and take their foot off the gas pedal only for a competitor to pass them. That includes me too, by the way. Big mistake. Now, I want to end this video with a quote from Epictetus from the book Art of Living, which I highly recommend picking up. Now is the time to get serious about living your ideals. Once you have determined the spiritual principles which you wish to exemplify, abide by these rules as if they were laws, as if it were indeed sinful to compromise them. Don't mind if others don't share your convictions. How long can you afford to put off who you really want to be? Your nobler self cannot wait any longer. Put your principles into practice now. Stop the excuses and the procrastination. This is your life. You aren't a child anymore. The sooner you set yourself to your spiritual program, the happier you will be. The longer you wait, the more you will be vulnerable to mediocrity and feel filled with shame and regret because you know you are capable of better. From this instant on, vow to stop disappointing yourself. Separate yourself from the mob. Decide to be extraordinary and do what you need to do now. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a comment below, hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.